Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into something that's literally rewiring how we build software, but probably not in the way the hype cycle wants you to believe. We're breaking down Axiacore's philosophy on using AI intentionally in software development. Look, as we all try to figure out how to weave these AI tools into our day-to-day workflows, there's just so much noise. But Camilo Nova, the CEO of Axiacore, recently dropped an incredibly clear framework based on his team's actual, real-world experience using tools like Codex and Claude Code. We're going to walk through their 5 core concepts for coding with AI, and I guarantee you, this is going to completely reframe how you approach your very next project.
Okay, so let's just tackle this dangerous modern myth right out of the gate. The question floating around everywhere right now is, can you build software without knowing how to code? You've got all these voices shouting that you can just prompt your way to a massive tech empire, zero coding knowledge required. End of story, right? Well, Axiacore pushes back on this incredibly hard. Sure, maybe that works for a quick weekend toy or a throwaway prototype. But when we're talking about building real, robust products, the kind of stuff people actually rely on, that idea is just flat out wrong.
To really get why, we need to completely shift how we view AI adoption. The myth wants you to believe it's a binary, 0 to 100 process. You just flip a magical switch and the AI takes the wheel. But the reality? It's a highly nuanced spectrum. Axiacore compares this to the thermostat in your house. When you're cold, you don't just blast the heat to 120 degrees, right? You adjust it until it feels perfectly balanced for your environment. How much AI you're using has to be carefully, deliberately dialed in.
Camilo Nova actually captures this dynamic perfectly. He says, think of it like adding salt when cooking. There isn't an exact amount. It's totally up to who's cooking. I absolutely love this analogy. It's such a great reminder that your human intuition and control are absolutely essential here. You are the master chef in this kitchen. The AI, it's not replacing you. It's simply the seasoning. You have to taste the dish as you go, and you alone need to know exactly when enough is enough.
But before we get to Axiacore's exact playbook for managing this, we have to talk about a massive hidden danger. The underlying incentive for any large language model, based purely on how their business models are structured, is to produce as many tokens as physically possible. Axiacore noted that in their own daily work, they had to be hyper-vigilant about token spend. It is so incredibly easy for an AI to just spit out line after line of bloated, verbose code, leaving you to clean up a massive digital mess at 3 a.m. If an AI's primary incentive is volume, it's naturally going to bloat your codebase if you aren't watching it like a hawk.
So to combat this token trap and avoid a kitchen completely overrun by chaos, the team at Axiacore huddled up after weeks of intense, hands-on work with these models. They realized pretty quickly that without extremely strict boundaries, the AI just takes over. So they developed a precise, no-nonsense philosophy to keep the code clean, keep it safe, and ensure the human developer remains the chef calling the shots. And ironically enough, as Camilo points out, this whole framework, it was written 100% by humans, not by an AI.
All right. Let's look at the 5 core concepts. 1. Plan, adjust, implement. 2. Read every line. 3. Simplify even more. 4. Fewer lines, more value. And 5. Each line must have purpose. This is our definitive roadmap for defeating AI laziness.
Let's break down the very first concept. Plan, adjust, implement. This sets the tone right away. Elegant coding starts with deep, intentional thinking, not just rapid-fire typing. The absolute biggest temptation when you have an AI coding assistant is to instantly jump to generating code the literal second you have an idea, just hoping the model will magically figure out the tough details for you. But this first rule demands that you hit the brakes. You have to thoroughly and strategically conceptualize the feature before you ever allow the machine to write a single thing.
So how do you actually do that? First, you write a plan. You can totally use something like a /plan mode in your editor. But the whole point is that you are thinking hard to keep the feature dead simple, actively fighting off any urge to over-engineer. And here's the kicker. Once you have that written plan, you don't execute it immediately. You read it. You find ways to simplify it, and you adjust that plan 2 or 3 times until it genuinely feels right. Only then, after all that iteration on the concept itself, do you actually implement the code.
Which brings us seamlessly to concept number 2, read every line. This is where we literally need to slow down and recognize the massive responsibility of reviewing the output. Whatever code gets spit out from that first implementation step, it is your job to read every single line of it. No exceptions. You absolutely cannot just copy, paste, and call it a day just because it happens to compile or passes some basic test.
And why is that so critical? Because, as Axiacore stresses, the code is meant to be understood by a person, not just by the LLM. Think about it. It is incredibly dangerous to have black box code sitting right in the middle of your product that no actual human on your team understands. At the end of the day, software is maintained, debugged, and evolved by human beings. If the AI wrote something that only the AI can comprehend, you haven't saved time, you've just introduced a massive ticking time bomb of a liability into your product.
But you know what? Just reading it isn't enough. Concept 3 demands that you simplify even more. Even after you've planned it out perfectly, even after you've read every single line the AI generated, your job still isn't over. You've got to continue stripping away the excess. The feature needs to fit flawlessly into your specific mental model of the software architecture. If it feels overly complex, it simply does not belong in your codebase.
This dynamic really highlights the ultimate division of labor. As the human developer, you're the one holding the vital, overarching context for the whole project. You're making the critical connections across the entire system. The AI, it completely lacks that deep architectural intuition. Axiacore makes this awesome point that human context is the literal fuel for that crucial, feels right part of the job. The AI can make a really good guess, sure, but only you know when the simplification has hit that exact perfect note for your product.
Now, concept 4 goes right after this very amateur assumption that a massive, huge wall of code means you're being super productive. The rule is simple: fewer lines, more value. Look, when you're using tools that can generate 1,000 lines of code in seconds, it is so tempting to equate all that volume with actual progress. But in professional software development, more code does not mean better code. Honestly, it's usually the exact opposite.
You have to constantly weigh these two fundamentally different things: AI laziness versus your human genius. AI laziness is when the model takes the most winding, verbose path possible to solve a problem because, remember, it's incentivized by token generation. Human genius, on the other hand, is doing way more with far less. Pushing through to find the absolute simplest, most elegant implementation is how you defeat that laziness. Your genius truly shines when you strip away the bloat and maximize the actual value.
And finally, we arrive at the 5th concept. Each line must have purpose. This is the ultimate culmination of the entire Axiacore philosophy. It's basically the final, uncompromising gatekeeper for your project's health. It demands total, absolute intentionality in your workflow. If a piece of code is making its way into your repository, it has to completely, without a doubt, justify its own existence.
To actually put this into practice, you have to be wildly aware of the purpose behind every single line. Never, under any circumstances, add files to a project if you don't know exactly what they do. Don't add random blocks of code just crossing your fingers and hoping they work. Camilo Nova gets pretty blunt about this in his post. He says, being the person who adds unknown files or code is just sad. And he's right. You can absolutely do better. This whole framework is a call to elevate your engineering standards, not lower them just because an AI can type faster than you.
So I want to end this explainer by leaving you with one final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. Ask yourself right now, does every line of your code actually have a purpose? The next time you sit down to build something, just remember, AI is an incredibly powerful seasoning, but you are the chef. Plan diligently, read every single line, simplify relentlessly, value elegance over volume, and demand purpose from your code. Thanks so much for hanging out with me to explore Axiacore's philosophy. I hope this helps you go out there and build cleaner, better products.